All right, so today we're going to be venturing into a realm that defies conventional sciences and challenges our very understanding of nature and consciousness. Our subject is none other than the enigmatic and often controversial figure Rupert Sheldrake, a man whose ideas have sparked debates in scientific circles and intrigued those, like us, with a taste for the unconventional. Sheldrake's hypothesis of morphic resonance proposes a world where invisible connections bind us, a universe where every plant, animal, and every human society shares a collective memory, transcending space and time. Imagine for a moment your pet knowing when you're coming home, or feeling someone's gaze without seeing them, or picking up the phone knowing who's on the other side of the line. So, quick background on Rupert Sheldrake. Are you guys familiar with him? Have you heard the name?
No, I've never heard of Rupert Sheldrake, but I liked that intro. That was cute.
I do like the last name though, like Sheldrake.
Yeah,
it does sound cool.
Mm-hmm. No, I've never heard of him or Morphic Resonance, but I kind of recognize the few of the things you were talking about. People who wonder coincidences in life, and if there's a biological explanation for them, that's pretty interesting. So yeah, do go on.
Yeah, so his work is the subject of enormous controversy, and his most significant... I'll give you a quick background check on him first. So, Rupert Sheldrake, born in 1942, old-ass dude, like proper boomer. British biologist and philosopher of sciences, English author, researcher in parapsychology, PhD in biology, Cambridge University, you know, all the big dick stuff, you know how it is. Principal plant physiologist, blah 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 blah. Authored over 90 scientific papers and several books. So this guy's got some cred. He's the real deal.
So you say he's reasonably accomplished in the field of biology.
Absolutely. Right? Would otherwise be a very respected figure in.
Is he British?
He is British. He's a lovely voice as well.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so his most significant proposal, Morphic Resonance, entails remarkable preconceptions of the understanding of biology, behavior, psychology, and even parapsychological phenomena and the nature of causation. Naturally, mainstream science has dismissed him, even going as far as covering him with outright malicious intent and animosity. That's why if you Google his name, you're just going to get just straight up slander, I guess you'll say.
You know, not to sidetrack you for a second here, but I do find it interesting, especially in the scientific field. The second someone steps out of bounds in a creative way, they're lambasted immediately. It's like they're fully discredited, and he doesn't even, from what I've looked up, he doesn't even seem like he was going fully out of bounds. He was just kind of pushing the boundaries a little bit of preconceived notions that we may have about the world around us. And I think that's interesting. And that, in a way, to me, used to be what science was. It was more free thinking. It was metaphysics. It used to be understanding God's creation and acknowledging you don't know everything about it. So I like creative scientific minds like this. And people don't understand, even if they are, let's just say, through scientific method, proven wrong, quote unquote, there's still value in what they're doing. It's not straight up snake oil quackery, you know, but keep going.
You know, it's always
Go ahead, Tice.
It's always weird how, like, the modern scientific community is so opposed to people, like, even researching a hypothesis. You know, to me, like, researching a hypothesis is the basis of science itself. So it's like, okay, if you propose something that is out of this world, so to speak, but you want to undergo a process of understanding if it's real or not, shouldn't you be cheered on by people in the scientific community? Shouldn't you, like, be, you know, like, cheered on for the process?
Right. So I've read a little bit about this, and in the past, the motivation for science in general was discovery, you know, pure motivations. But now we have, like, material motivations too, in the form of, like, awards and money. Like, for example, when you're doing case studies, there are, like, very real reasons why you may be encouraged to kind of skew results, because, like, if it, say for example you're doing some, like, research in, like, some food, like what effect do eggs have on, like, heart health, the egg industry is probably, like, going to be willing to pay you money if you, like, provide evidence for eggs being beneficial. Because in the other end of the stick, I don't know, vegans may say otherwise. So it's like just the intents are just like tainted now, I guess.
That was going to be what I was going to say, was that there's more money in it now. It used to be striving for, I don't know, dispersal of knowledge, understanding, explanation, but there's too much in the way of grants, universities, money that kind of will push people or tend to push them in a certain direction. And I think that's the secular issue with science right now. But
yeah. I mean, just one last thing about this, just to put it into perspective. The guy who came up with lobotomies, like taking an ice pick, shoving it behind someone's eye, and like just like knacking out someone's brain matter. That guy got a Nobel Prize.
Did he? At some
did.
point? That's amazing. I mean, that
incredible.
has to make you think twice about some of the practices that we do to this day, but we'll save that for another time. Absolutely. So yeah, what about Rupert Sheldrake? We got more about him.
All right.
Or what?
So we're going to go into Morphic Resonance. His magnum opus. So the theory proposes that natural systems inherit collective memory from their previous or similar systems. The memory is inherent in nature and not stored in the brain or genes. And it would explain telepathy-type interconnections between organisms. So, for example, dogs sensing owners' return, or you sensing being stared at in public. These self-organizing systems, kind of like crystals to societies, inherit the collective memory, influencing form and behavior, and these are called morphic fields, according to Rupert. It challenges traditional scientific assumptions, such as the laws of nature, more like habits than fixed rules, spatio-temporal connections across organisms, influencing each other across time and space. Each species member contributes to and draws from a collective memory, so rats are different to humans, humans are different to monkeys, and so on and so forth. And there is also something to be said about like your own personal kind of genetic lineage. Not genetically, but like just...
So you might be more interconnected with someone that's in your family?
Yes. So I'll get into this a little bit. There's some stuff about how like someone from like a long line of, I don't know, soldiers may have like an inherent kind of affinity for like wielding a gun, for example. So a good analogy I found for something like that is like let's say a long line of chefs. That's a better analogy. Like you may not genetically have like any special form of like palate or anything, like maybe your taste buds are just normal, but you might have an affinity for like creativity in the kitchen, or like maybe cutting vegetables like fast. Does that make sense?
It's kind of a biological familial reincarnation, at least a skill set. Sure.
At first people thought that this was like a kind of Lamarckian take on evolution, which is inherently like controversial because we went down the route of Darwinism, right? But we'll get into it. There's an interesting study about this later.
Okay, I was just going to say real quick, what you were saying just then reminded me of, and it's the classic. What was the main evolution guy's name again?
Charles Darwin.
Yeah, it was that Darwin concept where, okay, they're saying there was a missing link, or we evolved in this way. There's something in his studies that I did think was I think something that's observable is that when he was talking about the birds from different regions had different types of beaks that they developed over time to reach into certain types of trees of varying lengths between those two islands. And over time, their beaks adapted on those islands through, I guess, breeding in that area or continued use in that area or foraging in that. So I guess this is a really long way. Is that natural selection? I have no idea. But
it's like a survival of the fittest type of thing. Yeah. This
is kind of a neurological skill-based version of that. And so what that is kind of physical. This is kind of more you inherit these other proclivities through neurological means or through I don't know, through
the metaphysical.
But hold on,
possibly.
What's the mechanism by which these skills are transferred?
So we'll get into this. So the collective consciousness, and that's the main thing in the context of humans or any other creature. So each species member contributes to and draws from a collective memory. So that would answer your question, Tyson.
Collective memory, like the Akashic Field or something.
Yes, you're not too far.
Oh no,
you're on the right kind of wavelength.
Okay, I'm too learned. Okay.
No, it's okay. We're
So
open-minded.
you're telling me there's a field like a electromagnetic field that surrounds animals that is to deal with conscious memories.
The
Is that what
field
you're
may
telling
be
me?
the field may be a metaphor. Like, it doesn't have to be electromagnetic in nature. It can just be something superstitious, even.
I
But
use
it's some kind of
electromagnetic as an example.
Well, yeah, we'll
Oh,
stay
okay,
intangible for now. We'll stay intangible
Sure,
for
sure.
now. I don't need anything concrete. We'll keep going with it.
Yeah.
So anyway, what's the single most powerful piece of evidence for morphic resonance, according to Rupert Sheldrake?
Okay.
In his own words, there is a lot of circumstantial evidence for morphic resonance. The most striking experiment involved a long series of tests on rat learning that started in Harvard in the 1920s and continued over several decades. Rats learned to escape from a water maze, and subsequent generations learned faster and faster. At the time, this looked like an example of Lamarckian inheritance, which was taboo. The interesting thing is that after the rats had learned to escape more than 10 times quicker at Harvard, when the rats were then tested in Edinburgh, Scotland, and in Melbourne, Australia, they started more or less where the Harvard rats left off. In Melbourne, the rats continued to improve after repeated testing, and this effect was not confined to the descendants of the trained rats, suggesting a morphic resonance rather than an epigenetic effect.
And they're
And then,
still they were all in the same incestual rat family. They were all bred together and raised together to go through this maze, and they remembered how to go through the maze.
Not in all cases, no. Some of them were just not related at all, just the same species, perhaps. He
Okay.
details it in his book, A New Science of Life.
Interesting. So I'm trying to figure out where the connection is of why these same rats kept figuring out this maze rat generationally and finding their way to the end. I'm trying to figure out the connection between all the different rats.
It seems like it may not have to, like, it may appear like it's a generational thing, but it might not be at all. It might just be like, it might even be a case of like, if like one rat does it, his granddad would also know how to do it.
Okay.
Because it's just kind
I
of...
found my way through this maze like my rat grandpa before me. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're on the right lines. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, the inherent nature's memory. So this suggests a type of kind of biological memory inherent in all of nature, so like plants and everything as well, transcending traditional concepts of genetic memory and physical brain storage. So that would kind of answer your question about the whole generational thing, and like, is this like confined to like a species, or is this like universality? The theory applies to a wide range of natural systems, including biological organisms, chemical structures, and even human social systems. So when I was researching this, the human social systems was like the thing that they focused on. So like society, whatever, you know, you can probably extrapolate from that, like how civilizations are born, whatever. But chemical structures, I don't like how this is glossed over a lot, because I looked into this, and it was some stuff about how like if and when like we synthesize like a crystal, for example, in like a lab, the first time we do it, it's kind of hard. For some reason, like the following times we do it, no matter where we do it in the world, like it becomes easier to like create that crystal.
That's almost like when you drive somewhere and it feels like it takes forever, but then the drive home is never as bad.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm just saying things.
It makes you think about, because I mean, obviously a crystal's not alive, but is this like this is now we're talking about like atoms arranging themselves like easier because they've arranged themselves in that way before.
Ah, that is interesting. Okay.
So, and you can of course tie that to like, I don't know, is God becoming more experienced or something as we go on, or
well,
I don't want
not
get
to derail
blasphemous or
you.
anything, but...
No, I'll just say I couldn't name the author, but if anyone wants to look it up, I read it in college when I was in my soul-seeking phase, and it's called My Big Toe, My Big Theory of Everything. And it was mostly saying that the afterlife, life itself, glimpses of creation, participating in creation is it kind of boiled down to God being a computer, and it's you optimizing. Your life is an optimization for this God computer, and that's helping it to learn and be a better creator over time, and not even for society, but just for its own realm, all of creation. You know, it's that type of conversation, which it's not a
machine learning, then, like an AI.
Yeah, in a way. So that, and he would talk about how he tried to reach that afterlife, and there's a council, and it got ridiculous. But it was an interesting read that I somewhat enjoyed. But what you just said there really reminded me of it. That when you say it chemically too, that's so interesting. It's like an atom's not even awareness, but just like atomic. I just was maybe like resonance or something, repeatability that goes on within chemical interactions. It's pretty interesting. So
I never thought about that, but yeah, that kind of makes it a lot easier to kind of grasp your head around as well. If like God is an AI or something similar. Yeah.
So what else you got?
Okay, so yeah, continuing on. So mechanism. So it proposes that similar forms in nature resonate and share information across time and space through morphic fields. So we're not confined by like time. And see, that's what got me kind of confused, because like with the rat experiment, it sounds like we're looking at time moving linearly, and like the rat's progressively becoming more and more experienced. So if this isn't confined to time, surely the rat should be good from the get-go? Surely? Or,
you're saying that we have ancestral morphic resonance times that could affect us at any moment because it's not constrained to time? I don't know.
I'm not sure. Maybe like specific kind of resonances or fields can be sent through time. Which maybe like, I don't know.
Honestly, now that you're saying this, and I'll just let everyone know, I've never heard of this subject before Ari started talking about it just now. This kind of could be an explanation for what intuition is. Intuition is something that humans have that they can't quite put their finger on, but they feel it, and a lot of times they trust it. And I always give myself a lot of credence for having incredible intuition. So maybe I'm a product of morphic resonance. It's possible, but keep going for it.
No, you're good.
Yeah.
I can actually attest to the proficiency of your intuition too, because let's just say it affected me. But yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, bang on.
So what's the biggest implication if this is real?
Oh God, I that's probably the immediate thing I'd jump to, is like, what is the nature of God now? Like, because it kind of redefines and reconceptualizes traditional ideas that most people in society would probably have of God, that being like an anthropomorphic kind of man in the sky kind of thing. But this kind of, in my opinion, like would drag everyone into a more like almost Gnostic kind of view of God.
I think this gives a lot of room to the idea of collective consciousness, and we're veering into the high dorm room what is life area of conversation. Obviously we're looking more towards the scientific concept of what Rupert Sheldrake was coming up with. But I will say, I think an example of morphic resonance that happened in my own life that I think about sometimes. So you want to talk about affectations that are put out into let's just say into reality that you experience through ways that you aren't expecting. I remember there was this one girl I had a crush on in early college, where, I mean, we maybe talked to each other once and then never talked to each other again. I just thought she was cute, and I was thinking, like, this was not much came of it. But I remember I was at a train station one time, just a train station in the middle of nowhere near anyone, not a lot going on. I hadn't thought about this girl in weeks or months, and she just popped into my head randomly. I just thought, oh yeah, I wonder what she's up to these days. And then it kind of just like fleeted. And I was like, that's weird. I don't know why I was just thinking about her. And then I thought in my head, haha, what if she showed up here right now? And then 3 minutes after I thought that, she came walking down the stairs in the train station. This person that I hadn't thought of in an incredibly long time. And I happened to think of her at that moment. You can call it a coincidence, but I would say it was a universal reception as to what was going on around me. And I maybe pulled that out of whatever the equivalent of the field is. And was able to tap into it. I don't know, but people have coincidences like that in their lives that happen every single day. You know what I mean? I mean, that's. I don't know if anyone else has ever experienced anything like that in this group, but you know, it's like what you were saying when you're thinking about someone and then the phone rings. That kind of stuff. You know?
Yeah. That's like seems to be like the most common one. That or like. You feel like you're watched in public. Like, you know, have you ever like sat on a train or something? You can tell someone's looking at you.
Does this concept extend towards some aspects of destiny as well? So, for example, let's say I attribute a lot of mental energy towards a specific scenario. Would that scenario be more likely to manifest itself? For example.
It's a tough subject because you're talking about, you know, something like precognition or
the whole resonance thing would like it's more so about like multiple people like focusing on wanting something as opposed to one.
Right. I sort of understand your concept in the way that. So, for example, I would attribute some aspects of consciousness. And collective consciousness to scenarios that the universe has crafted, you know, like how should I put this? If I want X to happen, or if I want to learn something, the universe is going to show itself in a very, very obviously like conscious way to ensure that this lesson of mine that I desire becomes the lesson that I learn, you know?
So how about like prayer then as an example? Like if is prayer like a form of manifestation? Because if like multiple people are praying for a certain goal, then like perhaps it affects like the greater consciousness as a whole, and like whatever needs to take place for said thing to happen.
I don't think
the thing with prayer is that it can just make something like just happen, right? Like the thing I'm talking about is that when the thing, whatever it is, happens, it's so clearly, it so clearly stems from something that is conscious, you know?
So maybe you're putting this into effect by having a conscious thought about it in the first place. Are we veering into the realm of The Secret? You know, like manifestation. Is this a biological proof of manifestation? Because obviously within Christian catechism, you know, prayer isn't meant to be a wish fulfillment mechanism. It's obviously meant to give you a connection to God and God's will, but this is something that's a little bit different. It's not about, I don't think it's about destiny or fulfilling wishes. I don't know. I think it's more being attuned to what the universe may have in store for you, or what typically would, or I don't know, being aware of it, just being, you know, observing possibilities in your own life that the universe is opening up for you and capitalizing on them. For instance, I mean, even within my own, you want to talk about money, work, women, anything, you know, the universe will find a way to give you an opportunity for all of those things if you focus on them. So it's just more about what you do as a human when they're in front of you, and usually through human nature you find a way to ruin it. But
if God is like a collective consciousness and we're serving him, then we're kind of like going back to the whole like learning thing, like contributing to his learning, so like maybe stands to reward us in some way for that. Does that make sense?
That is an interesting way to put it. You got anything more going with Rupert?
Yeah. So I just want to there's a lot of stuff, but I want to go over the coolest stuff, which is the experiments he did.
Okay.
So there's like 3 main ones that I'll quickly glow over. The first one is the pet telepathy experiment. So this is a famous experiment. You might have actually heard of this, about telepathic dogs. So imagine your dog or cat seemingly knowing when you're about to come home, even at irregular times. They wanted to see if dogs could anticipate their owners returning home. So, to ensure the validity of experiments, he ensured that routine, auditory, and olfactory cues were ruled out. So, for example, if like the owner returned at certain times, or in like a random vehicle or different clothes or whatever, like he wanted to rule all of those things out. The observation method was the dogs were continuously recorded during the owner's absence. The results of this experiment were that the dogs began to exhibit like anticipatory behavior. So like the owners could be like 30 miles away, and when they were instructed to go home, the dogs would immediately like get up and like walk to the door and like sit by it, or like go to the window, look out the window, wait for their owner to come, even though there's nothing there for. There's no way the dog would know that.
Yeah, it's like instinct. I don't know. It could just be a scientific explanation for instinct and intuition. That's what I'm.
Well,
leaning
it was
towards.
repeatable across various dogs and their owners. It doesn't matter where they were, how far they were. They just knew. And by the way, the owners didn't know when they were going home. I just want to reiterate that point.
Okay.
They did not know when they were going home. The owners were out and about, like miles and miles away, and it was the researchers would call them up and tell them, "Okay, you're going home now." As soon as the owners knew, the dog would get up, like back at home.
Really?
So that's
Huh. That's interesting.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was repeatable over and over and over again. The dogs just knew somehow. They would go to the door every single time, go to the window, look outside. Strange, right?
I mean, if we're all sharing this Earth for billions of, maybe it depends how you measure something like that. But we're sharing this Earth for X amount of time. You think we would grow some sort of collective connection to each other, maybe through the Earth, or I don't know. Yeah, that's interesting.
I find it interesting how, like, the initial theory kind of proposes that these fields are like segmented by species, right? But here we are having like two completely different species interacting. So,
yeah, that is true. It could be interspecies.
Like, can I talk to my potatoes or something? Like, can I,
That's the old adage
know?
where if you talk to your plants once a day, they'll grow better or something. That is something that's kind of an old wives' tale. So
like
it could be
watering plants, maybe that's like good karma.
It's possible. Any other experiments there?
Yes. So another one, the sense of being stared at. So this seems to be like a universal experience that most of us have all felt. That eerie sensation of being watched. So he wanted to turn this into an experiment. So he did this by asking people if they were being stared at or not. So to ensure accuracy, the staring or not staring events are randomized. The participants couldn't rely on typical sensory cues. Yeah, so it's about as simple as it sounds. You take a person, you have someone staring at them, you don't have them staring at them. You see,
and what they know when they're being looked at, what they would mark when they knew they were being looked at, or something.
They'd mark when they were correct. They'd ask the person, were you being looked at said person at this moment? So it's basically kind of what they do. So the results. In several trials, participants correctly identified being stared at more often than they would expected by chance, suggesting that some beyond ordinary senses were at play.
That's an interesting one. That's strange. I don't know.
I'm sure we've all had that before in public.
Where they feel like they're being where people... Yeah,
yes.
Absolutely.
Yes,
absolutely.
Paranoia. Maybe there's something more to paranoia.
Yeah, you can tell when someone's staring at you.
Paranoia and anxiety are like... They stem from like something bad that did happen to you in the past. So it is like it is a rational response in some ways. So if we kind of extend this to like a grander consciousness, then I can see how you could sense being stared at.
Yeah,
Maybe
absolutely.
it's like a predatory, like a response is like from like predators or something,
So is this guy still alive or?
Yeah. He's still doing his thing. So one last thing, telephone telepathy. So I think this is another thing that we've all must have experienced before. So yeah, this kind of goes into those moments when you think of someone just before they call you or they text you or something, or when you know like who's on the other end of the phone when like someone's calling you.
Or when you think about someone you haven't thought about in a while at the train station, and then they walk down at the train station. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so to experiment with this, participants were asked to identify which one out of 4 people was calling them before answering the phone. And these callers were selected randomly, and the calls were made at varied times to avoid any form of pattern recognition. So again, kind of just eliminating those olfactory cues from before, so that the only kind of variables left were just schizo in nature. So yeah, standard cues like distinctive rings or caller ID were eliminated, so they wouldn't even see the name on the phone. They'd have to answer it to find out.
And they would say who they were thinking of beforehand or something?
Pretty much. So significant accuracy. So some participants identified the caller correctly far more often than the 25% success rate expected by chance, hinted at an unexplained form of knowing. And again, he attributes this to telepathic communication that's kind of like subconscious in us, but we don't, nowadays at least, we don't actively kind of channel that. Maybe not, some people can.
Well, that's a difficult thing to prove, you know? I mean, I think that's why I wouldn't put it in the realm of, you know, pseudoscience. I mean, pseudoscience is just, I don't even know what that term would mean anymore, but
it's in the same kind of vein as
it's
the word
esoteric
conspiracy theory.
Yeah, it's kind of lost its meaning. You know, it's like, oh, it's junk science, it's pseudoscience. You know, it could just be, it's just a hypothesis with a really difficult way to prove. It just, you know, but we can all. It's weird though, because it's something that we can all observe in life and attest to. You know, so that's why that's why it's like, well, okay, if it's not what he's saying, then what is it? And it's like, it's just coincidence. It's like, all right, then what are we doing then? You know what I mean? It's just, I don't know.
There is, I find the malicious kind of responses from mainstream scientists interesting, because it's almost like they themselves as human beings cannot deny that there's something there, but it's because that they work in like a certain field and they have like a kind of material view of everything. That like it's almost like some level of cognitive dissonance occurs in their minds. And like they almost feel threatened, like their very being, the very thing they study, their very career, like everything they are is now being threatened by this. Yeah. So they have to just slam down on it. Yeah. Besides that, I find it interesting in particular because it's so relatable to like ancient forms of wisdom, like back when science and philosophy were very closely tied, and like you said, esoteric. Like like the Hermetics, for example, they're kind of in line with this stuff. Or like Plato would also like kind of paint a different picture of like consciousness to what you'd hear today. I feel like this kind of resonates with that a lot, and I think it's mostly it's the disconnect between science and philosophy in the 21st century that.
Yes, and they all used to be connected, and religion as well. And religion, they used to all be on the same page, but now it's that Tower of Babylon has fallen, unfortunately. So, but I appreciate you sharing this guy with us. I had no idea what this was, and I think it's just one of the few mysteries left in life. You know, it's kind of like how when you look for an explanation of what deja vu is, there's no true explanation of that, and maybe we'll talk about that in another episode. But it's the same thing. It's like, yeah, we all know what's happening to us. Can we explain it? No, it doesn't mean we shouldn't ask. You know, especially from esteemed accredited professors when they ask outlandish questions about it, why not let them do that and just listen and talk about it instead of, you know, tar and feathering them? It's interesting. So,
all right, well, that's about it for today. So if there's anything you want to take away from today, it's just that if you feel like you're being watched, maybe you are, and maybe it's by someone behind the scary door.